All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our LinkedIn Live, where we're going to dive into how you can gain the upper hand over health insurance companies. And we're going to spend about 45 minutes together, maybe a little bit longer. Feel free to use the chat. Hopefully this is streaming on all the different things that we have set up. And as always, there'll be a replay available of this as well. So I'm really excited to go over this with you because, quite frankly, I have seen a lot of people, quite frankly, who have struggled. And, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on right now. So I'm going to dive right into this topic. So here's what we're going to dive into is if you haven't seen the notices, the reality is that insurance rates are going up. They're going up about 18% on average. Your reimbursement rates, if just standard office visits and things of that nature, are going down about 4%. And what this is meaning is that people are going to see about a $92 a month increase in their health insurance fees, and you're going to make $1.50 less. Now, the really scary part of this is the health insurance companies are reporting record profits. So here's just kind of a list of the profit increases. So United Health Group, in first quarter of 2022 had a 3% increase in profit. They made $5 billion with a B dollars. Anthem had an 8% increase year over year. They made $1.81 billion. CVS, a 4% increase. They made $2.3 billion. This isn't the first quarter. This isn't the year. This is just the quarter. Humana is up 12%, $930 million. Cigna is up $1.1 billion, which is 2% increase. Centene is up 21%, their profits year over year, just for the first quarter alone. That's $849 million. And Molina is up 13% at $258 million just for Q1. So my goal is simple on this call. The only way for you to really take great care of your patients and treat them and do the treatments that you want to do is for you to get out from under the thumb of the insurance companies. Now, some of you on this might have already made the transition. Good for you. This is going to be really beneficial for you as well. But there's a lot of you out there that have still yet to make the move, and you've been probably noticing that it's just not getting any better. I mean, the reality is aside from that little blip in COVID, when was the last time your insurance reimbursements went up? You're playing this constant game of whack-a-mole of what are they going to allow? What are they going to do? And you really don't get to make the medical decisions that you want. So that's what we're going to dive into. Now, before we do, just a real brief background on me. If you're not familiar with me, I started in the medical space in late 2013, opened my first non-insurance business practice in 2014. We grew that to 3 locations in 18 months, doing $6.5 million a year. Sold that in late 2017. Today, I work with medical practice owners all over the US and Canada, and I help them either scale their existing non-insurance practice or break free from their insurance practice to offer non-insurance modalities. So I'm not a physician. I'm just a business guy. And as much training as you've had as a physician, I've had just as much on the business side of it. And so I want to share with you the insights on this because I know that a lot of doctors just don't get the business training that they need. So to kind of really just give you an idea, my clients, my practices have generated in excess of $200 million in revenues combined since, probably since, I started my first practice in 2014. I'm sure that number's probably even a little bit higher. So I'm going to give you some case studies. We're going to dive into this and we're going to get rolling. So let's talk a little bit about you, okay? Because you're really not here to hear about me. Let's talk about you and your situation. Maybe you've tried to do this insurance transition recently, and it didn't work out. Maybe your staff didn't really buy into it. Maybe for whatever reason, there just wasn't the opportunity to make this work. Maybe you think your patients won't pay for cash services. Maybe because you've tried to do this in the past and they don't. Or maybe you've already made the move, but it doesn't seem to be any better. Then what I'm going to share with you, it's definitely for you. Now, there's a reason why this hasn't worked for you. And the reason why, if you've tried to make this transition or you've thought about making this transition, there's a couple of reasons as to why it doesn't work. First and foremost, it's your staff. Your staff a lot of times will give you a lot of resistance to making this move, even if you have a small staff of like 6 people. And we're going to talk about that, what you can do about that. Maybe you didn't get patient buy-in. Maybe you're presented this to a couple of patients and they just didn't really bite on it, and that kind of dampened your enthusiasm about it. We'll talk about how to fix that. Maybe you've never had enough time to devote to the change because you're so busy with insurance patients. This is a big one. I'll share with you how to create some space in your schedule starting next week so that you can see really a foolproof way to be able to make space for the non-insurance patients. Or maybe you've invested in a machine or a procedure, did some training, but you didn't really understand how to create a fervent demand, a crazy demand and for the services. And I'm going to talk about that as well. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about some of the epiphanies that I've had in working with a lot of my clients. And I want to tell you the story of Dr. Roy Schmidt from Jackson, Tennessee. Now, Roy is an anesthesiologist by training. He's wound up in pain management. Jackson, Tennessee is kind of a rural city of about 300,000, I think, in the MSA, the metro market, just kind of that surrounding area. And he does a lot of pain management, does a lot of pill prescriptions, things of that nature, all that stuff. But he's just had it. He started doing the numbers and he started looking at it and realized that he wasn't making any money doing pain management. He was generating a lot of revenue. They were really, really busy, but they weren't making any money. So he decided right about 90 days ago to make the leap and just shut down all of the Medicare, Medicaid insurance stuff. They still take a little bit of insurance, I think. But none of the real low end stuff, and they've picked and choose, but they're like 85% of the business that they do is cash. They just couldn't take it anymore. And so what happened, I think Roy's a great example of this. He has tried to make that transition in the past to non-insurance. But he would get stuck. He would start to have some success. And then what would happen is all of a sudden, like, the staff, they would get really, really busy on the insurance side, which is a really common thing that happens. We'll talk about that as well. Or he made a couple of offers to some patients and they didn't really buy in. And the reason why that happens, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the staff giving you resistance, and I want to talk about getting the patients to buy in. The reason why you may have challenges with staff getting buy-in is they themselves can't see paying for medical care out of their pocket. Now, even though they already pay out of pocket for medical care, let me explain. My wife has great medical care. And, we have a great plan, or what seems like a great plan. And, recently I did an MRI, prostate MRI, just kind of like a double check and make sure and, kind of thing. And when you look at all of the tests that I took beforehand in the MRI, I wound up spending over $1,000 out of my pocket for the MRI. Okay. That was after insurance covered it. Okay. When you look at, the medications and the things like that, that you're just kind of the pre-tests and things like that, and the follow-up, when I factored it in, I spent about $1,800 out of my pocket for that process to, do the biopsy and everything on my prostate. Good news, everything's fine. It was just a shadow. They wanted to be extra careful, which is fine. But when you really think about it, I spent like at least $1,800, if not close to $2,000 out of my pocket for those tests and just to be made sure. And, I hear this all the time from people is, their insurance doesn't really cover everything that they think it should cover. I mean, on the surface, it sounds great. And the other thing is, if you're self-employed, most self-employed people that I know, they're paying $500 to $1,000 a month for healthcare, but they have a $10,000 deductible. So they really they just have like major catastrophic care. So people are paying out of pocket for stuff. If you have an injured knee and you don't want to do surgery, you've done multiple MRIs, multiple x-rays, multiple pills, multiple injections, all of those come with an out-of-pocket expense. And it's not uncommon that those patients have spent $8,000 to $10,000 out of pocket over the last 2 to 3 years to try and get that situation fixed. So the one thing you have to do is you have to explain to your staff that the people are already paying out of pocket. It's not like all of this is covered. And yet you need to explain to them what you're really not making, right? Like they just don't realize how little you get paid for doing these procedures. I have a client, Dr. Mark Pietropoli, who's in Skinny Atlas, New York. He's an orthopedic surgeon. He makes on average $1,500 on an ACL surgery, ACL repair surgery. That includes, out of that, he has to pay his PA, his nurse, the pre-work, and the PT. Okay. So he's really not making any money. Like and he has to drive an hour to go to the surgery center and then come back and all of this. So he's just not making a lot of money doing it. And so when you really factor in how little you make and how much your patient is paying out of pocket, the non-insurance route really becomes a really smart thing to do. You have to change your mind and your mindset of saying, or work on your mindset, I should say, of realizing that this option just doesn't, it's just not working for most people. Okay. It's just not getting them the results that they want. And they have to be paying out of pocket. So they're paying all this money out of pocket and they're not really fixing their issue. So that's the first thing with regards to staff. And then the second thing is getting patient buy-in. You have to explain to them what they're spending money out of pocket and how it's not working. And then the other thing on that is getting patient buy-in is I always teach all of my doctors what they have to do is you want to create packages, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. So, so this really becomes this, it becomes this unbelievably self-fulfilling prophecy, right? With regards to how little care the patient is getting and how little money you are making. Okay. So I just can't stress this enough. It's an awful, awful situation to be in. So what's the solutions, right? I want to talk a little bit about what we call these false beliefs. Okay. And I want to spend some time on these false beliefs. And then I want to start sharing with you some solutions of how to break through that. Okay. So the first thing is there's this false belief that we already talked about that my patients won't pay cash. And I have yet to find a practice. And I have clinics that I've done this with in Billings, Montana. I have a client, Skinny Atlas, upstate New York. It's not like there's a ton of money in upstate New York. There's some, but there's a lot of working class people up there as well. They've done it they've been able to successfully do it throughout the entire United States and not just like places like Manhattan and LA, okay, or Vegas. We're doing this all over the United States. And a lot of times we're doing this with a lot of great success in some of the smaller places. The most interesting one is my client, Dr. Vicki James, who's on the south side of Atlanta, who serves her offices in a lower income area. She's a family physician, and she's been able to make this transition to cash in a market where you would think, gosh, they just don't have that kind of money, but yet she is finding people that are willing to pay out of pocket to fix their regenerative joint pain issues. Okay, so this false belief that your patients won't pay cash, it really comes down to how you've positioned yourself. And I'm going to give you the tools and how to do that in just a minute. This other false belief is that they're going to say, well, I want to check and see if it's covered first. I'll tell you how to handle that. And this other false belief, if you say that if you've tried marketing to bring in these patients, I will tell you that's one of the worst things you can do in the beginning, because if you already have a list, we're going to talk about how to cover the list. Okay. So I want to share with you a new way to do this and a new way to look at this. Okay. And so I'm going to dive into these secrets right now. If you have questions, feel free to post them in the comments section. And we'll dive into this. All right. So the first thing is, when we started scaling our practices, we created a system to do it. So I'm a systems guy. I love systems because it makes my life easy. It allows me to take a lot of time off. It allows me to play a lot of golf, and I love to play golf. And so I'm going to walk you through what's called the stairway system. And I've used this throughout the US and Canada in hundreds of locations, ones that I've owned, ones that I haven't owned, and I've put these in place. So the first, if you think about the stairway, there's 5 steps. Okay. And you can't skip a step. You have to touch on each step. You have to build that foundation because each step builds upon the other. All right. So the first thing is that in the very first step, okay, is what we call your beachhead. And a beachhead is a military term. If you think about this in World War II terms, for those of you that remember World War II, and the Normandy landing, the landings in Normandy in early June of 1944, is what we did is we created a beachhead. We put all of our men and material, ships, planes, guns, people, everything into a very small beachhead. And from there, we were able to pump men and material into the European continent to fight the Nazi regime and eventually overthrew the Nazis. And if you think about this, it works the same thing in business, is that too many doctors have too many offers. And what I want you to have is I want you to have one offer or one market, one message, and one offer. Okay. And that's what we call the power of ones. This is a very powerful, powerful tool that to understand if you have a very clear offer to your client base and they know what you stand for, then you are going to be very successful. So one of the first reasons why maybe your transition to non-insurance hasn't worked in the past is that you've tried to sell a procedure versus selling an end result. So when we had the erectile dysfunction clinics, we originally used to think that we were in the erection business, and we quickly realized that we were not. We were in the orgasm business, the O business, because we wanted couples to have great sex again and again and again. So anything that related to that end goal of having great sex again and again and again was what we did. And our beachhead offer was to bring men in to help fix their erectile dysfunction. And we wanted men that had failed using pills, potions, pumps, and porn. And this is a really big concept for you to get. So like if you want to translate this to regenerative, let's just say that you want to do regenerative. Let's say you're a pain management doc and you want to do regenerative. Well, then what I would do is you need to target the type of people who have ongoing pain that you know that the cortisone steroid shots haven't worked, that they're tired of taking the pills. They've tried all kinds of different things covered by the insurance and none of it isn't working long-term, and they want a longer-term advantage. And so if you have 100 patients that come in the span of a month, you've got 10 that are willing to buy something. Now, in the third step of the stairway system, I'll explain to you how to price it so that you can make more money with just seeing a couple of patients for regenerative or anything else than you can by seeing 60 insurance patients a day. Okay. So you have to have one market, one message, one offer. And it's that message has to be centered around the end result that the patient wants. What is it if you could come in and sprinkle magic pixie dust over them, what is that thing that you would, that they want, right? That if you could just sprinkle pixie dust, like I have a client that up in Buffalo, New York, and he works with women with laser lipo, and it's women who want to lose 2 inches around their waist without any exercise or changing their eating habits. That's what he does. And he gets great results, right? And he has an entire process and solution. And eventually he moves them to the path of changing their diet and exercise and everything. But the front end is they want the magic pill. Okay. So that's really what we're doing, is that we're essentially selling that perfect end result that they want. Okay. The second thing is, the second part of the stairway system that builds upon the beachhead is the concept of what I call educate and excite. And people buy from you because they know, like, and trust you. Okay. Write that down. People buy from you because they know, like, and trust you. They don't buy from you because you have the cheapest pricing. Okay. Now somebody out there right now is going, but Matt, I always sell in price, or my clients always want the best price. You've got the wrong clients. Get rid of those clients. Okay. There's plenty of people out there who do not buy on price alone. They buy on end result. Case in point, my wife and I built this really nice patio. I like to cook. I cook outside. I have a green egg, the whole thing. We spend a lot of time outside. We both work at home. And so we actually spent the money on the outside of the house, the backyard patio and screened-in porch, before we spent a ton of money on the inside, right? And we always joke about it, but we spent a lot of time out there. And we didn't spend money. We got a lot of bids, right? And there was a big variation in the bids, but we wound up going with one of the most expensive because they got to know us, we got to know them. I really liked the guy that we were dealing with, and I had a really high trust factor because of their really great reviews and just kind of how they approached the whole thing. And so they educated us, and we got really excited. They took the time to really kind of explain which type of grill I wanted to buy, how we wanted to set things up. I mean, there were a couple of things we wanted to do, and he talked me out of it. He's like, "You do not want to do that. It's going to create a really bad environment." And so they educated and they excited us. Okay. Which then leads to the third component of the conversion strategy, of the stairway system, and that's convert. Okay. Now, most people want to just skip to number 3. How do I make more sales? Now, notice I'm not talking about getting more leads. I'm not talking about getting more appointments. I'm talking about a system and a process in order for you to grow your practice and move away from insurance-based care 100%. Okay. And look, if you still want to have some portion of your insurance business there because you feel as an obligation of physician, that's fine. Just view it for what it is. It's a charity. Okay. Because you're not going to make any money doing it. And the more you bemoan about not making money at it, is every time is taking energy away from you building something where you can get paid what you're worth, invest in your retirement, take time off, and really donate more time to helping the people that maybe you want to donate your time to for quality healthcare. And that's fine. I have quite a few doctors that do that. Okay. So when it comes to conversion, there are a couple of key things in order to convert people. Remember, you are selling the end result. You are not selling the procedure. Okay. You know, in the ED business, guys had to inject themselves in the base of the penis, but they didn't care because we were giving them the result that they wanted. They wanted to be able to make love again. Okay. They wanted to have sex again. And that was just kind of a sideline for them versus the end result, right? They had enough emotional pain about not being able to perform or satisfy their partner that they wanted to go ahead and do this. And it's the same thing, by the way, in regenerative, anti-aging, menopause, weight loss. It's all the same stuff. Okay. Don't get caught up in the fact of, well, he keeps talking about ED. It's just kind of one of the easiest things to talk about, right? But so if you look at this from a regenerative standpoint, there's 2 components in order to get people to convert. One, you have to create a signature solution. Okay. And that signature solution can't just be selling one PRP. Okay. One, that's not the best thing for the patient. Okay. You're not going to get the positive results for the patient. And in the insurance business, what they do is they move it along a little step by step. Okay. And the reason why they move it along step by step is the insurance company doesn't want to pay. Okay. So they say, okay, well, you come in for the office visit, and then during that office visit, you have to then schedule another one to come in for such and such, or we're going to start you with this anti-inflammatory. And if that doesn't work, then we're going to do an x-ray, and then we're going to get an MRI, and then we're going to do injections. And then we're going to do, we're going to, whatever, we're going to do osteoarthritis injection protocol and bracing and all of that fun stuff. And that is intended to take a slow path to make sure the insurance companies do not have to pay out sooner, which is one of the ways they get their huge profits. In our business, in the non-insurance side, we have to create a protocol that's going to show them it's going to give them the greatest opportunity to fix their problem. Okay. And so when it comes to regenerative, we put together packages that are things like HRT, IV, nutrition, maybe some physical therapy. Don't call it physical therapy, call it something else. PRP injections, maybe BMAC injections, maybe have them do a vegan diet prior to. I mean, there's all these different things that you can do, but we create an entire package, what we call a signature solution. And that signature solution allows them to charge what we call premium pricing. Okay. Now they're not able to go price shop, right? Like, think about it this way. If the cardiologist tells you that you need a quadruple bypass, you don't say to them, look, let's do one artery and see how it goes. Absolutely not. You're going to say, let's get this done. And so think about it like that. Instead of think about this as piecemeal, think about this from a cardiologist standpoint. Okay. You're going to provide the absolute perfect solution, best solution possible for them so that they never have to have this situation again. So then the third step, or I'm sorry, that's the third step. The fourth step, now these first three steps, by the way, these are where you focus your time and energy. The next two steps are steps that build upon this, but we really just basically take our time to put those in place. Generally, we can get a doctor out of insurance-based care within 90 days. Okay. If they're willing to do the work, make the space in their schedule, market to their list, which we'll talk about that here in just a moment, then they can be out of insurance-based care in as little as 90 days. Okay. I help people transition all the time. Dr. Brian Rogers, Dr. Mark Pietrapoli. I'm working with Amrish Patel right now to do the same thing. Mark Bavarick, all of these folks, Nikki Garcia, all of these folks, we just help them completely transition. Okay. So the top two pieces are eventually you'll create a monthly recurring revenue, which is kind of like a membership, not concierge medicine where they join, but like they get IVs or things like that. I have a doctor that generates in excess of $250,000 a month, not a year, $250,000 a month in monthly recurring revenue. It generates well over 75% of her monthly revenue is purely from monthly recurring revenue. She has 2 locations. Then the fifth step is what we call the Maybach offer. And eventually what you can do is create a 1% offer. The Maybach is really, if you think about this from the standpoint of the Mercedes Maybach, it's a $350,000 or $500,000 car. And you may not sell a lot of those, but you only need to sell 1 or 2. Back about 15 years ago, the old toy retail store, there was one called FAO Schwartz, and they had a store right near, I think it was on Park Avenue or right on the south of Central Park, right across from the plaza. And you would go in there, and at the Christmas time, they would have a diamond encrusted baby grand piano for $1 million. And it was also in their catalog that they shipped out. And the funny thing is everybody's like, oh my God, who would spend $1 million? Well, they would sell like 2 or 3 of those a year. But also right below that, they had or maybe that was a grand piano. Maybe they had a baby grand piano that you could do diamond encrusted that was $500,000. Okay. But that top price actually made the $500,000 thing look a lot less expensive. And they sold a lot of those. And so you always think about this. You want to have some kind of package that's just unbelievably out of reach eventually, but it's going to make everything else look inexpensive in comparison. It's going to set the value of who you are. Okay. So that's it. It's, so the first step is the beachhead. The second is educate and excite. The third is convert. The fourth is monthly recurring revenue. And the fifth is what I call the Maybach offer, target the 1%. Okay. Now you might be wondering, who does this work for? It works for anesthesiologists, orthopedics, family doctors, pain management, med spas, ER docs, practice owners, anti-aging, naturopaths, you name it. I've had them come through. Any type of doctor, PA, DO, NP, LPN, RN, you name it. Whoever wants to break free of insurance-based care, this will work because we do it now. We're doing it day in and day out. Okay. So the last thing I want to kind of talk with you about, there's 2 last things that I want to cover. And the first is, you might ask, well, how do we let people know about this? Well, the best way to do this is to market to your existing list. Okay. And I'm not talking about sending a sale out. Some of you might already be marketing, but there's a process that we have that we take people through, and it's called our 5130. And for every 1,000 names that you have in your database with emails, every 1,000 names, we'll generally create about $25,000 to $35,000 just in the first 30 to 45 days, just from marketing to that list. I have one doctor, we sent it to 600. He picked up 60 people that were interested, 30 appointments, and made an excess of $75,000. Okay. That's Dr. Mark Pietrapoli up in beautiful upstate New York, up in Skaneateles. Okay. And just doing this part-time, that creates the energy and the enthusiasm and the momentum to be able to get out of the insurance-based care. And we'll have them out of insurance-based care by the end of the year. So the best way, if you already have an existing practice, the best way is not to generate more leads. Even if, by the way, you have an existing cash practice and you've generated a bunch of leads, I can guarantee you that we could go back into your list and we could generate income off of that list that's just sitting there to create that little oomph or boost that you're looking for and pay for things. Okay. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to sell you anything on this call. We'll talk about, but I am going to give you an opportunity to talk with me here in just a few minutes. Okay. Now, we've done this in lots of places. Tracy Page up in Appleton, Wisconsin, Larry Siegel, who has multiple locations in Central Florida. Trevor Buccieri, who's in Buffalo. He does $221,000 a month. Dr. Kane Lai has 4 locations in Colorado, Phoenix, Nevada, and Southern California. Dr. Tom Nabity went from $397,000 to $947,000 during the pandemic. All of them believed that their patients wouldn't pay cash, that their patients wanted it covered. They had tried marketing in the past and didn't get any leads. They believed that the staff wouldn't go for it, and they didn't have enough time. All of them were trying to do this while they were doing something else. And yet, Tracy's doing within 7 months of opening, $131,000 and growing. Larry Siegel does couple $100,000 per location per month. Trevor Buccieri, $221 a month. Dr. Kane Lai, like I said, has 4 locations, all done virtually, telemedicine. Tom Nabity, you heard his numbers. Okay. So let me just ask you this question. I want you to contemplate this. Would you like to dive into your issue with regards to getting away from the insurance side one-on-one with me? I mean, I'm talking about like really dig deep to see that real opportunity you have to transition to cash, or maybe you've already made the transition and you're just not breaking out over that $50,000, $83,000 a month. $83,000 a month will get you $1 million a year. So I want to give you the opportunity to ask me the questions that you want to ask, to really get answers from someone who's done it. And I not only have done it in the past, but I'm continuing to do this today. This is what we do. Our mission is very simple: to help doctors break the chains of insurance-based care so they can treat their patients as they wish and get paid what they richly deserve. Now, I'm going to give you an opportunity to schedule a call with me. Now, to put this into perspective, I charge $7,500 for people to spend 4 hours with me face-to-face to consult with me here in Charlotte. That's over $1,800 an hour, or $900 a half hour. But for a limited time, I'm going to give you an opportunity to book a 30-minute one-on-one call with me to ask me anything about your business, the roadmap to transition to cash, or massively scale your practice. If you are not making at least $1 million a year in the practice, $250,000 a year personal income. I'm not talking about the coverage of the cell phone bill. I'm talking about real W-2 income. And if you are not taking at least 4 weeks off a year where you do not check in, then I want you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to share with you. And this is very, very limited. I will in the very near future no longer be doing any of these one-on-one consult calls. I'll be only doing them for my clients. I do have a couple staff members that I'm training to take this over. So if you want to get a 30-minute call with me, valued at over $900, I want you to write this website down. Go to Call with Matt, C-A-L-L with W-I-T-H, Matt, 2 T's, M-A-T-T, callwithmatt.com. What's going to happen is you'll go to that page. My calendar is right on there. You will give it'll give you what dates and times are available. And then when you register, it'll send you a Zoom link and remind you so that you can make the call. Now, truth be told, the 30-minute call sometimes goes a little bit longer. I do block a little bit of extra time to spend time with you. So I would plan about 45 minutes in your calendar, but some people we can dive in really quickly in 30 minutes. Sometimes other takes just a little bit longer. So make sure you give yourself enough time. I do have a couple of things that I want to give to you as a bonus. When you show up, you got to show up. You can't just schedule a no-show. But when you show up, I'm going to give you 2 bonuses. One, I'll mail you a copy of my top-selling book, The Anatomy of a 7-Figure Medical Practice. Dr. Mark Pietrapalli said that it was so important that he had me deliver one to every single one of his staff members, 20 staff members, and they're going through and reading it together as a company. Copy of the audio book as well. I'll send that to you. That's a $97 value. I'll give you that for free, but that's when you show up for the call. You can't just register for the call and then no show. So you have to show up for the call to do that. The main thing that I ask is if you book your call and you need to cancel or reschedule, you do so in 24 hours in advance so that I can free up my schedule for other people. Okay. So again, just go to callwithmatt.com to schedule that and take advantage of it. Okay. Now, there are a couple of things that I do want to dive into. One, if you have questions, please feel free to go ahead and type them in the comment section. If you're watching this after which I know a lot of you are because of the technical difficulties we had yesterday, just go ahead and type the questions in the comment sections, or you can message me directly. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. However, if you want to use the messenger as a way to communicate with me instead of booking the call and you have like really involved questions, I'll probably just give you the link again to the call and say, look, book the call. Okay. That's really going to be the most effective thing that you can do. But here's the deal. The insurance world is not going to get any better. I mean, I think we all know that. They're not going to increase your reimbursement rates. They're not really, frankly, interested in what you think. I think the end game for the insurance providers is they want to be in cahoots with the hospital groups and they want to put you out of business. Okay. They want to control our healthcare as much as they possibly can. And we have to create options for the American citizens. And the funny thing is they're already spending massive amounts out of pocket anyway and not getting the results that they want or they deserve. So why not just deliver it directly to them? You know, my out-of-pocket medical expenses with great healthcare exceed $10,000 a year. I mean, it's very, very common for the for someone in my age group, and you know, there's just a lot of that going on. Okay, and even if people are only making $50,000-$60,000 a year, you'll be amazed how much money they have set aside for these things. You'd be amazed at the number of plumbers and carpenters and you know, blue collar folks that come in and will pay big money for these kind of things. You'll be amazed at the number of people that have just had it, that feel the same way we do about American healthcare and just want to take back control. So take advantage of it. It's callwithmatt.com. That's callwithmatt.com. Book a 30-minute call with me, and I'll give you 2 bonuses when you show up. I'll give you a copy of my top-selling book, The Anatomy of a 7-Figure Medical Practice, and the audio of that book, which is valued at $97. I'll send that to you as well. All right, so take advantage of it. That is callwithmatt.com. And I don't see any other questions right now that are coming in, but for those of you that want to take advantage of this, please do.